I'm 75 years old. My name is Daniel Moore. I'm 68 years old, and for most of my adult life, I genuinely believed I was a good partner. Not exceptional, not perfect, but decent, reliable, and present in the ways that mattered, or at least in the ways I thought mattered at the time. I stayed, I was faithful, I paid the bills, I handled responsibilities. When something broke, I fixed it. When a problem appeared, I solved it. I believe that this was what commitment looked like over the long term. And if you had asked me 10 years ago how my relationship was going, I would have told you it was stable, solid, even successful by most standards. We didn't fight much. There were no dramatic arguments, no betrayals, no visible crises. From the outside, we looked like a couple who had figured things out, who had found a way to last. People often told us how calm we seemed together, how steady, how rare that kind of peace was after so many years. What I didn't understand then is that a relationship can appear calm and still be quietly deteriorating underneath the surface. You can share a home, a routine, and a life with someone while slowly losing access to who they really are. 29 years, I lived beside a woman who tried to connect with me in ways that never felt urgent enough for me to take seriously. She wasn't dramatic, she didn't demand, she didn't accuse. Instead, she suggested small things, going for a walk together in the evening, sitting down to talk without distractions, reminding me of how we used to laugh late into the night when life felt lighter and time seemed endless. And every time, I had an answer ready. I was tired, I was busy, it wasn't the right moment, we could do it later. I never intended to hurt her. I simply assumed there would always be another opportunity, another evening, another phase of life where those moments would fit more easily. I believed that once love was established, it could sustain itself with minimal effort, that the work belonged mostly to the beginning, and that consistency alone would carry us through the rest. What I failed to see was what was happening quietly on her side of the relationship. Each time I postponed closeness, she adjusted. Each time I chose convenience over connection, she adapted. Over time, she stopped insisting, then she stopped asking, and eventually she stopped expecting. And I mistook that silence for harmony. It was my greatest misunderstanding. We became efficient partners. We ran a household smoothly. We coordinated schedules, managed responsibilities, and handled life together in a practical sense. But somewhere along the way, we stopped sharing ourselves with one another. And I told myself that this was simply what long relationships turned into, that passion fades, routines take over, and stability replaces intimacy. I didn't realize I was confusing longevity with closeness. I thought staying was enough. I thought avoiding major mistakes meant I was doing things right. And because the changes happened so slowly, they never felt dangerous. One missed conversation here, one distracted evening there, one later that quietly erased a now. None of it felt urgent at the time. None of it felt like loss. That's why I didn't notice what was really happening, and why I didn't recognize the moment she stopped trying while she was still standing right next to me. I would only understand the weight of that silence much later, long after it mattered. There wasn't a single moment when everything collapsed. No argument, no goodbye, no dramatic turning point that I could point to and say, this is where it went wrong. That's what makes it so easy to miss. What happened instead was much quieter. I remember one evening in particular, though at the time it didn't seem important. We were sitting in the living room, each of us absorbed in our own little world. The television was on, but neither of us was really watching it. She turned to me and said, almost casually, "Do you ever feel like we stopped talking?" I laughed it off. I said something light, something practical. I told her we talked all the time, about bills, about plans, about what needed to get done the next day. I didn't hear what she was actually asking. She didn't argue with me, she just nodded. That should have worried me, but it didn't. Over the next few months I noticed small changes, though I didn't recognize them for what they were. She started spending more time out of the house. She joined groups, took classes, made friends I barely knew. I told myself this was healthy, independence, balance. What I didn't ask myself was why she stopped trying to include me. She no longer suggested we do things together. No more walks, no more late-night conversations, no more attempts to pull me into her inner world. time, I felt relieved. I had more space, more quiet, fewer interruptions. Life felt smoother, easier. That's the part I'm most ashamed of now, because what I thought was peace was actually resignation. I didn't understand that when someone stops asking, it's rarely because they no longer care. It's because they've learned that asking costs too much effort, too much disappointment, too much vulnerability with no return. Years later, after everything had already changed, I asked her about that period. I asked her when she decided to stop trying. She thought for a long time before answering. Then she said, "I realized I was always reaching, and you were always already somewhere else." That sentence has followed me ever since. She told me she didn't want to force connection. She didn't want to beg for attention or insist on being chosen. She wanted me to want to be there, to notice, to lean in without being prompted. And when that didn't happen, she adjusted her expectations instead of her behavior. She lowered them. From the outside, nothing looked wrong. We still lived together, still shared meals, still showed up to family events side by side. People told us how solid we seemed, how lucky we were to have such a calm relationship. They mistook calm for closeness. I did too. What I see now is that she was slowly detaching while remaining physically present, protecting herself by investing less, feeling less, expecting less. She didn't leave because leaving would have required a fight. She gave up because giving up required nothing from me. And that was the cruelest realization of all. By the time I sensed something was truly wrong, the distance between us wasn't new anymore. It was familiar, settled, permanent. I didn't understand then that silence isn't the absence of conflict. It's often the sound of someone finally letting go. The real understanding didn't come immediately. It rarely does. By the time I realized what had been happening, the distance between us wasn't something I could close with a conversation or a gesture. It had been building for years, quietly, patiently, while I convinced myself everything was fine. When she finally left, people around me were shocked. They told me they never saw it coming, that we seemed so steady, so calm, so normal. I nodded along because I had thought the same thing. What they didn't see, and what I refused to see for a long time, was that the relationship hadn't ended when she walked away. It ended years earlier, when she stopped believing I would meet her halfway. After she was gone, the silence in the house felt different. Not peaceful, heavy. There were no arguments echoing in the walls, no anger to push against, just the absence of a presence I had taken for granted. I started replaying moments I had dismissed as insignificant. The evenings I chose distraction over conversation, the times I said later without meaning soon, the way I listened just enough to respond but not enough to understand. None of it felt cruel at the time. That's what makes it dangerous. I wasn't unfaithful. I wasn't abusive. I wasn't absent in the obvious ways. I was simply disengaged. And disengagement doesn't announce itself as a problem. It disguises itself as comfort. Weeks after she left, I found a box while cleaning out a closet. Inside were notebooks, old photos, little reminders of a life she had carried mostly on her own. Reading through them felt like meeting someone I thought I knew, but never truly understood. She wrote about loneliness, about feeling unseen, about learning to rely on herself emotionally while still sharing a life with someone else. She also wrote about hope. Not hope that I would change dramatically, just hope that I would notice. That was the part that stayed with me. She didn't want grand gestures. She didn't want promises. She wanted presence, curiosity, effort that wasn't requested. I thought love was something you secured once and then maintained by avoiding mistakes. I didn't understand that love requires active participation, even when nothing seems wrong. Especially when nothing seems wrong. People still tell me I did my best, that relationships fade, that this kind of thing happens. And maybe that's true. But here's what I know now. Relationships don't end because someone leaves. They end because someone stops being chosen over and over again, until choosing no longer feels possible. If you're watching this and someone is still in your life, still trying in quiet ways, still reaching without making noise, pay attention. That effort doesn't last forever, not because people are impatient, but because eventually protecting yourself feels more necessary than staying connected. She didn't leave me. She gave up. And I noticed after 29 years, if you still have time, use it. I didn't know how valuable it was until it was gone.